the Smoothie Book, which you can buy on relish.com. And I'm here to talk to you every week about nutrition topics. This week is all about basil. I have two different kinds right there. We are going to talk about what is basil. We're going to talk about the history of basil. We're going to talk about the different cuisines and what it means to different cultures. We're going to talk health benefits, and then we're going to do a recipe for peach basil smoothies. Super excited about that. So, welcome to the show. I love when we have a conversation. So if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say about basil, put it in the chat. I have that up and ready to go so I can see if anybody has questions or comments. So, please join the conversation. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. Okay. So, there is a lot of information on basil. I have lots of notes and lots of things to talk about today. So, what is basil? Basil, as we know, it's such a great plant, or an herb. There we go. Basil is an aromatic herb. It does smell very good. The scientific name is Ocimum basilicum. So basil is in that word. And it's a member of the mint family, which that family's name is Lamiaceae family. So the other plants in this family are mint, lavender, rosemary, and sage. So lots of different herbs and plants in that family. Basil is mostly cultivated for its edible leaves. Sometimes the extract is used, sometimes the seeds are used, but it's mostly cultivated for the leaves, which are delicious. Our son likes to go out into our yard and just eat pieces of the basil leaves as we're like talking. We'll be talking and he'll be like, "Oh, excuse me, I have to go get a basil leaf." Great. There are over 60 varieties of basil. We're going to talk about a handful of them today, but that is a lot of different varieties. They're usually green. Sometimes they are purple. I'm going to show you our purple basil, which tastes pretty much like the regular green basil that we're used to, but makes a very interesting colored pesto. Okay, and let's see. So basil is one of the easiest plants to propagate by just cutting the stems, by stem cuttings, which I thought that was interesting. The word basil comes from the Greek word which means kingly or royally, kingly or royal. It's considered the king of herbs by a lot of cookbook writers still these days. And it's very sensitive to cold, so that's why it's best grown in the summer. That's why it's in season right now. Most places are pretty warm. So yes, it's best grown in hot, dry climates, which, lucky for us in Seattle, it is warm and dry in the summer. So basil grows very nicely here. And it usually has a strong anise flavor. It's pretty pungent. In the sweet basil, we'll talk about the other kinds of basil and what those flavors are in a little bit. So that's kind of the background info. Now I want to talk about some of the different cultural beliefs and thoughts about basil, because I found so much really interesting information about different parts of the world and what they do and think of basil. So it is believed to have originated in India. But it's been cultivated for over 5,000 years worldwide. It eventually, as it migrated westward and other parts of the world, they usually transported the whole plant, which, as we talked about, it grows pretty easily in warm, dry climates. So if you transport the whole plant that way, then it can be transported and grown in other places of the world. Okay, so here are the interesting pieces of information. It was used in embalming and preserving in Egyptian tombs because they found it, or for mummies, and they found it in the tombs. And in Europe, they placed basil in the hands of the dead to ensure a safe journey. And similarly, in India, they placed basil in the mouth of the dying to ensure they reached God. And in ancient Egypt and Greece, they believed it would open gates of heaven for a person passing on. So it's a very powerful herb, very powerful plant. Basil is also a symbol of mourning in Greece, maybe because of that. It's also known as the silicon futon, which means magnificent, royal, or kingly. And basil seeds have historically been used in Ayurvedic medicine, which is the traditional medicine in India. So that was interesting as well. In Jewish traditions, basil is believed to add strength while fasting. And it's also a symbol of love in present-day Italy, probably because it's so delicious. And African legend claimed that it protected people against scorpions. And in many Orthodox churches, they add basil to holy water, and also basil plants that are placed under altars. So it has been, thought to be a very powerful plant. I keep saying herb, plant, same thing. Okay, in this conversation. Okay, so, that's so interesting. I did not know a lot of those things before my research. Okay, so all the different varieties. Sweet basil is the one that we're most familiar with. So here we go. This is the kind that we use for pestos, things like that. It's the most common that we know. It's grown in warm tropical climates, like we talked about. It's native to India and other tropical regions of Asia, but it has been cultivated for over 5,000 years, so lots of different parts of the world use sweet basil. There's also lemon basil. This has a special plant compound in it called citral, which gives it that citrusy, lemony flavor. And it's a cross between sweet basil and African basil. I thought that was pretty interesting. Holy basil, which we're going to be talking quite a bit about that throughout the show today. It's also called tulsi. And I don't know if you've seen it in like health food stores or Whole Foods or anything like that, but it's become pretty popular. You can get holy basil tea, you can get holy basil supplements or extracts or anything like that. So it's become very important. And it's highly revered in Hinduism, being connected to the god Vishnu. And it's also, they use the holy basil in Greek Orthodox churches with holy water. And it's also said to have been found around Christ's tomb. But it looks like mint. It looks a little bit different, maybe because it's from the mint family, but it looks a little bit different than the sweet basil. And yes, it's often used in teas, things like that. We'll talk about health benefits of holy basil later, but it is different than the sweet basil. There's also Thai basil, and these leaves are a little bit skinnier, a little bit more pointed, and they have a bolder, crisper flavor than the sweet basil that we're used to. It has a strong licorice flavor as well, often used in Thai cooking, other Asian-based cooking as well, but it has a pretty different flavor than the sweet basil. And then there's the African basil, which we talked about, the research that I did on how to describe it, they say it has an elliptical, slightly tapered shape ending in a soft point on the non-stem end, so just the regular end. The leaves are flat, broad, and smooth, covered in prominent veining with lightly separated edges. And then the flavor has notes of menthol, musk, and cloves. And then a lot of other basil plants grown around Asia also have clove-like qualities to their leaves. And then there's the dark opal basil, which I showed you at the beginning of the show. Here we go. It's kind of hard to see. But it tastes a lot like the sweet basil, but it's purple, and it makes a very interesting pesto. I think I already said that. It makes a very interesting colored pesto, but it tastes the same. Okay, so let's talk about all the different uses of basil in culinary ways. So, I'm going to talk about the ways we eat it first. So, fresh basil, we typically eat that in a fresh, as it's fresh, so salads, pestos, things like that. caprese salad, delicious with a little bit of tomato, a little bit of mozzarella. And then if you are using it with cooked foods, it's usually added at the end of cooking. Like if you have pizza with basil, you cook the pizza first, then you add the basil. You have a soup, you want to add basil to it, fresh basil, slice up the basil, add it to the top as a garnish, because the heat kind of changes the texture and the flavor and the integrity of it. What's the best basil for cream sauce? Great question, John. I would say the sweet basil is probably the best for a cream sauce. Yeah, because you think about like pesto, things like that, and typically we use the sweet basil. But yeah, very good question. Thank you. Also, another form of basil that we use is essential oil, because the leaves do have a pretty good amount of oils in them, and lots of good health benefits in the oils. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but you can buy the essential oil, or there are supplements you can take as well. Talk to your doctor about taking it medicinally. And dried basil is also another form of basil, typically made with a sweet basil that's been dried. And it's a lot more pungent and a lot stronger flavor. It tastes a lot different, not that fresh flavor, but it does last a lot longer, especially in the cupboard. So if you need that for sauces, that's what it typically use in things that you're gonna cook, like sauces. Like I made a marinara sauce yesterday, used the Italian seasoning, that has dried basil in it. Really, really good. I want to tell you a little story about dried basil and the concentrated flavor that it adds. So I used to work at a cafe, and I was still learning a lot about cooking, and I was supposed to be making tomato basil soup. And the recipe called for it was probably like 1 cup of basil. And I did not see any fresh basil, so I assumed it was dried basil. So I put a cup of dried basil, which is an insane amount of dried basil. You would probably if you're using dried, you'd probably only use maybe like 1 tablespoon. And a cup is 16 tablespoons. So I made it. I was like the night shift that day. I made it, and it was supposed to be for the next day. And the owner was very, very nice the next day and told me, oh yes, you were supposed to be using fresh basil, 1 cup. So we disposed of that soup because it was not even, the tomato basil soup is supposed to be kind of an orangish soup. It was definitely more green. So that was a good lesson learned. Fresh, you use a lot more than you would dried, just so we all know. But yeah, I think about that a lot whenever I'm using dried basil. Okay, so all the different cuisines that use basil. Sweet basil is very commonly used around the world. Italian food uses a lot of the sweet basil, such as pestos, the margherita pizza, caprese salad, Mediterranean cooking, Thai cooking, Vietnamese cooking. If you've ever gone out for pho, the soup with the noodles and the vegetables and the meats, a lot of times you get basil leaves to add at the end. And also food from Laotian food. Chinese cuisine also uses fresh or dried basil in soups and salads. And in Taiwan, there's a thick soup that they make, and they add fresh basil to that. They also eat fried chicken with deep fried basil leaves, which I'd really like to try. I think that sounds really interesting. Basil is often paired with fruit to make jams, especially like strawberries, raspberries, plums. I've made a blackberry mint crisp, and it is blackberry basil crisp, which is so good. You mix the blackberries with, a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of brown sugar, and chopped up basil, and then you make the crisp topping with the oats. So, so good. Sweet basil. Okay, there's a comment. Okay, this is an example of the sweet basil. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so traditionally, so we talked about that. And basil is sometimes used with fruits, we said that. And lemon basil is used in Indonesia. It's served as like with a fresh salad with like fresh cabbage, green beans, and cucumbers. and that's served alongside like fish or duck. So a nice fresh flavor on the side. And then this is interesting, I did not know this. The seeds of basil can also be hydrated, soaked, and then they become gelatinous, and they can be used in a lot of Asian drinks and desserts. So, excuse me, I would like to try that. Okay, so medicinal uses of basil. So sweet basil is traditionally used for a lot of different conditions, including bronchitis, flu, muscle pain, cold, insect bites, so lots of different things. And we'll talk about all the reasons why. Fresh basil contains a lot of vitamins, a lot of minerals, a lot of antioxidants, such as lutein, zeaxanthin, beta-carotene, and beta-cryptoxanthin, which can provide a lot of health benefits. We'll talk about that as well. And sweet basil has a lot of, there's a plant compound in sweet basil called eugenol, which is an antioxidant, which does a lot of good things for our health, and also provides that strong clove-like flavor and scent to basil. And lemon and lime basils have high concentrations of a compound called limonene, which is also gives it that citrusy scent and also has some health benefits. Okay, I have 10 health benefits of basil, different varieties, things like that. And then we'll talk a little bit about storing basil, things like that. And then we're going to make some smoothies. I'm so excited about that. They sound very refreshing, very seasonal because they have peach and basil in them. Okay, so health benefit number 1. Basil contains antioxidants. We just talked about that, largely from the eugenol, which is the plant compound, which could help reduce oxidative stress. If you've watched my show before, you know that I love talking about antioxidants and how good they are for us. Those free radicals out in the environment, in our foods, things like that, can harm our body. They can cause a variety of health conditions, like heart disease, diabetes, arthritis, things like that. And so if we have antioxidants in our life, it helps combat those free radicals, which is a good thing. Number 2. Basil may help with blood sugar regulation. There have been studies out there about this, but there was one particular study where they gave animals with diabetes some basil extract, and it helped reduce their high blood sugar. Number 3, basil may help prevent cancer. Holy basil, also called tulsi, has phytochemicals, those good plant compounds that have health benefits. May help protect against different types of cancer, like lung cancer, liver cancer, oral cancer, and skin cancer, largely because of the antioxidant components. Other reasons as well, but that's a big part of it. Okay, number 4. Basil may be good for our heart health, which is always a good thing. It's always good to have things that are heart healthy for us. The eugenol, so these are all the reasons that it could help our heart. The eugenol may help lower our blood pressure and also may help lower our cholesterol and triglycerides. All good things for our heart. There was a study done where volunteers were given either a placebo or a capsule containing 300 milligrams of the dried tulsi leaf once a day. And after 4 weeks, the people that had that tulsi extract, the holy basil, had lower levels of cholesterol and triglycerides compared to the people who did not. Okay, basil also contains magnesium, which helps improve our blood flow by allowing muscles and blood vessels to relax, also good for our heart. So lots of good reasons. Okay, number 5, basil may help reduce inflammation. We know chronic inflammation is not good for our health. So the eugenol, the essential oils in eugenol, or the essential oils in basil contain eugenol and other compounds that help fight inflammation in our body, which is a good thing. And basil may also help improve our mental health. This is so interesting. Research has shown that holy basil may have many benefits helping our mental health. It has compounds that can help with anxiety and depression, increase our ability to think clearly, which is great. and may lower the risk of age-related memory loss. So this is so interesting too. Mental stress can trigger the production of free radicals in our body. So we want the antioxidants to battle that. So according to a study, or a review in 2014, they looked at the role of Tulsi on our mental health, and they found that it may help alleviate stress and anxiety, it may increase our ability to think better, may help age-related memory loss, and it also may improve our stress-related sleep issues. So holy basil is really good, apparently. And, okay, number 7. Basil may help boost our immune system. Also good. Largely probably because of the antioxidants. Also because the oils in basil are antibacterial and may help fight bacterial issues in people with respiratory, urinary, abdominal, or skin infections. So there was a study done where they applied sweet basil oil to E. coli, and that E. coli was extracted from these different infections that people may have had, and they found that the basil was active against, or it combated the bacteria. So that was pretty interesting. Antibacterial. Number 8. Basil also has a lot of good vitamins and minerals like vitamin A, vitamin K, calcium, and iron. All good things that we know are good for our health. Number 9, basil is good for our liver health. There was a study done where they gave powdered versions of the holy basil, and it had a positive impact on liver health in this animal study. Number 10, Number 10, and then we'll move on. Basil may also protect our skin from aging. I liked this. In the study, there was a study where sweet basil was applied to skin samples, and they found that it helped. So the conclusion was that products with basil in them, basil essential oils, may help our skin more so than eating basil, but still. I don't know if I've ever seen a skin or a lotion or anything or eye cream or something with basil in it, but I'm going to look for it now. Okay, so are there risks in eating basil? Not a ton, but there were a few that I found. One is some people have an allergy to plants in the mint family, the Lamiaceae family. So if you find that you are allergic to mint, or lavender, or sage, or rosemary, you may be allergic to basil as well, so you would have to avoid it. Also, I thought this was interesting. So basil has a high content of vitamin K in it, which helps with blood clotting. So if you're taking blood thinners, talk to your doctor about how much basil you should be consuming. I thought that was interesting. So, what's the best way to store basil? Fresh basil, you can wrap it in a damp towel. That should keep it in the refrigerator for a couple of days. Or, you know my favorite, put the basil in a glass of water. And then I read you can loosely cover it with like a plastic bag or something. That should help keep it for a while in the refrigerator. Dried basil, best stored in an airtight container in a dark, cool area, away from heat, away from your stove, like the pantry. So, that's that. Okay, we have a smoothie to make. I'm super excited. I'm going to make 2 different versions of it. So it is called Peach Basil Kefir Smoothie. I'm going to alter the recipe a little bit. So we're going to make 2 versions. We're going to use fresh peach, and we're going to use frozen peach. We're always going to use fresh basil. We're going to use water and ice cubes, or we're going to use almond milk. Okay, 2 different versions. Let's get blending, because you know I love smoothies. I wrote a whole smoothie book. Okay, so version number 1, we are going to use ice cubes. I have a whole cup. I have 4 ice cubes in here. It's a little warm in here, so they melted a little bit. That's okay. And we are going to use a fresh peach. So I'm going to cut up a peach. We have lots of peaches in our house right now. does make ice cream out of kefir, but I wanted to keep it dairy-free. So that's why we're doing these versions. Okay, so we have 1 whole peach, 4 ice cubes, and 3 basil leaves. 3 basil leaves. And, let's see, a cup of water. All right, let's see how this goes. I like to keep it simple. I think this is going to be really refreshing. It's also going to be like peach juice, I think. Okay, here we go. Smoothie number 1. Ice cubes, fresh peach, basil leaves, water. It looks good. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna pour this in here. Okay, it's gonna take up a little bit more. Oh, I'm gonna put the rest in this glass here. Okay, that's perfect. Wow, that makes a good amount of smoothie because of all the peaches. Let's take a taste. Oh yeah, that's really, really good. Really, really refreshing. Okay. Yum, that's good. The next version is frozen peaches, 3 basil leaves, and a cup of almond milk. So if you want to keep things cold, usually add something frozen. A lot of times, just add ice cubes. I do that a lot. Okay, instead of using frozen fruit, we're going to try it with frozen fruit and see if it tastes any different. Okay, here we go. All right. Looks good. Here we go. Let's give it a try. Basil is just such an interesting addition. I don't think I added basil to any recipe in the smoothie book. We'll see. Oh, that's good. I like it with the almond milk. That makes it takes it to another level. Oh yeah, that's really good. I recommend that. Or making it with the kefir ice cubes. Okay. So, that's the story on basil. Very, very interesting information out there about basil. So, thank you so much for joining the show. Speaking of smoothies, you can always buy the smoothie book on relish.com in the shop section. And check out all the different smoothies that we have there. Relish.com has a lot of great smoothies on it as well. Lots and lots and lots of recipes with basil in them, and also peaches. So, very seasonal. Okay, well thank you so much for joining the show. Go get some basil. If you grew it, get some from your garden. If you want to go to the grocery or the farmer's market to get basil, there are so many good things to do with basil, including the smoothie. Super refreshing. All right, thank you all for joining. See you again next time. Have a great day.